Let your breathing slow, and let the whole of this day settle quietly behind you. There is nowhere you need to be tonight, and nothing left that you must figure out. The tasks can wait. The unanswered messages, the unfinished thoughts, the small worries that followed you in here, all of it can wait. For the next little while, you are simply going to rest and let yourself be carried gently through 100 of the strangest and softest mysteries that science still cannot fully explain, the deep, open questions that the finest minds in the world continue to sit with, patiently, without any embarrassment at all, because not knowing has never once been a failure. It is only, sometimes, the truest and gentlest thing there is to say. We will drift slowly, from one quiet unknown to the next, through the deepest questions of existence, the dark and hidden matter of the universe, the soft puzzle of your own aware mind, and further still. Some of these mysteries may sound enormous at first, and then settle, softly, into something almost cozy, little open doors, rather than locked ones, each with a comfortable draft of wonder drifting through. You do not need to solve any of them tonight. You do not need to remember a single word or hold on to a single number. Let each one pass through you the way a soft breeze passes through an open window, touching you gently and moving on, leaving the room a little cooler and a little calmer than it was before. And whenever your eyes grow heavy, let them close. The mysteries will keep. They always have. So settle now into the most comfortable stillness you can find. Let your shoulders soften and drop away from your ears, heavier than they have been all day. Let your jaw unclench and your hands grow loose and warm in whatever position they happen to be resting. Take a slow moment simply to arrive here, to feel the weight of your body, held and supported, exactly where it lies. Feel the places where you touch the bed, your heels, your calves, the backs of your thighs, your hips, your back, your shoulders, the back of your head. All of it held. All of it safe. There is nothing you need to carry now. Let the bed do the holding, the way it always has, faithfully, every single night, whether you thanked it or not. Let us take a little while, before we begin, to let your body grow properly heavy. There is no hurry toward the stars, or toward the questions, or toward anything at all. They have waited centuries already, and they will wait a few minutes more. So bring your gentle attention first to your feet. Feel them, wherever they rest, and let them soften completely, every small holding let go, until they are warm and heavy and still. Let that same soft heaviness rise into your ankles and your calves and your knees, each part loosening as your attention moves over it, like a warm hand gently smoothing a crease from a sheet. Up into your thighs now, and your hips, growing loose and warm and heavy, sinking a little deeper into the mattress with every breath. Let the softness rise now into your belly, rising and falling gently with each slow breath into your lower back, releasing the whole center of you, unclenching, settling, coming to rest. Let it spread up through your chest and out along your shoulders, and let your shoulders drop fully, further than you thought they could. Down your arms now, all the way to your fingertips, your upper arms, your elbows, your forearms, your hands, each finger growing loose and warm and still. There is nothing your hands need to hold tonight. Let them lie open and empty and entirely at ease. And let the softness rise, last of all, into your neck and your throat and your face. Let your jaw fall gently open, so the small muscles there can finally rest. Let your cheeks soften and the space between your eyebrows grow smooth and wide. Let your eyes grow heavy in their sockets, heavier and heavier, until keeping them open feels like far more effort than simply letting them close. And let the very crown of your head soften, too, so that from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, your whole body is warm and heavy and held and entirely at rest. There is nothing more you need to do now, and nowhere you need to go. You may simply listen, or you may drift. Either is exactly right, and neither is better than the other. If your mind wanders off into one of these small mysteries, let it wander. You need not follow it all the way, and you need not solve a single one before you sleep. Many of the very questions we will visit tonight have never been closed by anyone in all of human history, and they were never going to be closed by you either, not at this hour, not with your eyes this heavy. That is not a small thing to feel relieved about. You are not behind. You are simply resting inside a universe that is, itself, still comfortably and endlessly curious about its own nature, and so, gently, tonight, are you. Take one slow breath in, and let it go, and let us begin, without the smallest rush, among the oldest and gentlest unanswered questions there are. Let us begin, gently, at the very beginning, with the deepest question there is, and the softest way there could ever be to ask it. Why is there anything at all? Why a universe? Why stars? Why a night sky above you right now instead of nothing, forever, with no one to notice its absence? It is the oldest question human beings have ever asked, and after all these centuries of asking, no one, not the wisest physicist, not the gentlest philosopher, has ever been able to answer it fully. And that is all right. Tonight is not for solving it. Tonight is only for holding it, softly, the way you might hold a smooth stone found on a beach, turning it over once or twice in your hand, admiring its shape, and then setting it down again, unsolved, and none the worse for it. Some questions are companions rather than problems. They do not need to be finished to be good company. So let this one walk beside you now, quietly, as we drift into the oldest and gentlest mysteries there are. Long before telescopes, and long before mathematics, someone must have looked up at a dark sky and wondered why any of it was here at all, why there is a universe instead of a simple, eternal blankness. It sounds, at first, like the kind of question a child asks and a grown-up gently deflects. But physicists and philosophers alike have never been able to close it. Every explanation for the universe's existence seems to need some further thing to explain it in turn, and that thing needs an explanation of its own, on and on, without any place where the questioning is forced to stop. Some thinkers propose that nothing, in the strictest sense, may be unstable, that a true and perfect void could never quite hold still. Others simply admit that we do not know, and may never know, why existence tipped itself into being rather than staying empty forever. It is the softest of all mysteries to fall asleep beside, not a puzzle with a missing piece, but a doorway that has simply never needed to be closed. You may rest in the doorway. You do not have to walk through it tonight. Almost 14 billion years ago, by every measurement we can make, the universe was unimaginably small, and hot, and dense, and then it began, gently and explosively all at once, to expand, cooling as it spread, into the vast and starry dark we know tonight. We call the beginning of that expansion the Big Bang, and we can trace its afterglow across the whole sky even now, in a faint bath of ancient light left over from the very first moments. But ask what happened before it, or what caused it to begin, and the answers grow soft and uncertain. Our best equations for time and space themselves seem to lose their footing right at that first instant, unable to say clearly what, if anything, came earlier. Perhaps the question of before does not even mean what we think it means, in a place where time itself was just being born. Physicists sit with this patiently, the way you might sit with a very old, very kind mystery that isn't going anywhere. It has waited 14 billion years already. It can wait through one more quiet night while you rest. Even the deepest, darkest emptiness of space is not, physicists tell us, truly empty. Down at the smallest scales, in what looks to every measurement like perfect nothingness, tiny pairs of particles are believed to flicker in and out of existence continuously, borrowing a small breath of energy from the vacuum itself, appearing for the briefest imaginable instant, and then vanishing again, as though the universe were quietly, restlessly humming to itself even in its stillest places. We call them virtual particles, and their soft, fleeting effects have been measured in careful laboratory experiments, so we know that something like this is really happening, even though no one has ever fully explained why the vacuum behaves this way, or what it truly means for empty space to bubble so gently with almost existence. It is a strange comfort, in its way, that even nothingness, examined closely enough, turns out to be alive with quiet, fleeting activity. Perhaps true stillness, complete and absolute, does not exist anywhere at all, not even in the vacuum, and not even, some nights, in a mind trying so hard to rest. Let it flicker. You do not have to catch it. The universe runs on a small handful of numbers, the strength of gravity, the pull that binds atoms together, the mass of the smallest particles, numbers that were, as far as anyone can tell, simply set, once, at the very beginning, and have not changed since. And here is the quiet wonder of it: if almost any of those numbers were even slightly different, stars might never have been able to form, or atoms might never have held together, and a universe capable of chemistry, of planets, of anything at all like life, might never have come to be. Why the numbers landed exactly where they needed to, for a universe this rich to exist, is something no one has ever been able to fully explain. Some imagine countless other universes, elsewhere, with other numbers, mostly empty and dark. Others suspect there is a deeper reason we simply have not found yet. Either way, the numbers are what they are, and they were kind to us. You do not owe the universe an explanation for its own good fortune. You are only asked, tonight, to rest inside it. There is a particular kind of energy woven into empty space itself, one that appears to be gently pushing the universe to expand a little faster with every passing age. When physicists try to calculate, from the smallest and best understood rules of nature, how much of this energy empty space ought to contain, and then compare that number to what we actually observe out among the galaxies, the two answers disagree by an amount so enormous that it is hard to even say aloud. It is, by common agreement, one of the strangest mismatches in all of science, a sign that something deep in our understanding is still missing, quietly, somewhere between the smallest scales and the largest. And yet the universe itself is not troubled by our arithmetic. It continues, unbothered, exactly as it always has, expanding gently outward while we work, patiently, at narrowing the gap in our own understanding. Some mysteries are like that, entirely real, and entirely unthreatening, sitting calmly in a physicist's notebook while the stars themselves go on shining, indifferent to whether we have caught up with them yet. in the earliest moments after the universe began, our best theories say that matter and its mirror twin, antimatter, should have been created in perfectly equal amounts and should then have met and cancelled each other out completely, leaving nothing behind but light, and no galaxies, and no stars, and no gentle nights like this one. And yet here we are. Somewhere, in that first blaze of creation, a very small imbalance crept in. For every billion or so pairs that vanished together, one small extra grain of matter was left standing, unmatched, alone. And it is from that tiny, leftover handful of survivors that every star, every planet, and every one of us was eventually made. No one yet knows exactly why that small imbalance appeared, or what tipped the scales so gently in matter's favor. It remains one of physics' most patient open questions. But whatever the reason, we may be quietly grateful for it, an entire universe of stars and skies and sleepy nights, built from the smallest of margins, the tiniest of leftovers, saved from a would-be nothing. The smallest building blocks of matter come in families, one heavier and stranger than the last, though only the lightest of them make up the ordinary world around you, your body, your bed, the walls of your room. Why nature bothered to make heavier, short-lived cousins of these particles at all, cousins that flicker into being for the briefest instant in great experiments and then vanish, playing no lasting part in the ordinary universe, is something physicists still cannot fully say. And why there are exactly 3 such families, neither 2 nor 4 nor some other number, is one of the quiet open questions sitting at the very heart of our best theory of particles. It works beautifully, this theory, describing everything we can measure with remarkable precision. It simply does not explain why its own guest list looks the way it does. Perhaps there is a deeper pattern still to be found. Perhaps the number 3 is, for now, simply where the counting stops. Either way, the ordinary matter of your own quiet body was drawn only from the lightest, gentlest family of all, the one built to last. No one knows, even now, whether the universe goes on forever, or whether it is enormous but finite, curving back on itself in some vast and gentle way too large for any telescope to trace. Every measurement we have made of its shape looks, as far as our best instruments can tell, remarkably flat and open, which is consistent with an infinite universe, stretching without any edge in every direction, forever. But it is also consistent with a finite one, simply so much larger than the small patch we can observe that its curvature has never yet revealed itself to us. We may never be able to tell the difference, tucked as we are inside one small corner of it, able to see only so far as its light has had time to reach us since the beginning. It is a genuinely open question, resting quietly at the edge of cosmology, unlikely to be settled soon. And there is something soothing in that uncertainty, if you let there be, whether the universe ends somewhere, far beyond all seeing, or never ends at all. It holds you gently either way, tonight, exactly the same. It turns out to be surprisingly difficult to say what nothing really means. Empty space, as we have already found, is not truly empty. It hums, faintly, with quantum activity. And even the laws of physics themselves, the rules that would still apply even if every particle and every star were somehow removed, seem to be a kind of something, a structure that persists even in the barest imaginable universe. Philosophers and physicists have circled this question for a very long time. Is there a state simpler than empty space, simpler even than the laws that govern it, a true and absolute nothing? Or does every attempt to imagine nothingness quietly smuggle some faint something back in, the moment we try to picture it. No one has ever settled it. It may be that nothing, in the fullest sense, is not a place anyone could ever actually find, even in principle, that reality, once it exists at all, has never once managed to fully unmake itself. There is something gently reassuring in a universe that cannot quite manage its own absence. It holds on. And so, tonight, does the quiet fact of you, resting within it. So here we are, at the very start of our long night of wondering, already face to face with the deepest question of all, and already, gently, letting it go unanswered. That is not a failure of the evening. It is the whole quiet point of it. Human beings have always lived comfortably beside questions larger than any answer could hold: why the sky is dark at night, why anything exists, why the numbers of the universe fell where they did. We do not need the answers in hand to sleep peacefully beneath the stars they concern. The universe was existing, mysteriously and beautifully, for billions of years before anyone thought to ask why, and it did not wait for permission, and it does not need one now. Let the great question simply hang there, softly, above you, unresolved and entirely unthreatening, a high, quiet ceiling over the room where you are about to fall asleep. You are allowed to not know why there is a universe. You are only asked, tonight, to rest inside the fact that there is one, and that you, improbably, are here in it. We have stood, for a little while, at the very edge of existence itself, at the deepest and oldest of all the questions science still cannot close. And perhaps what we found there is this, that a mystery, held gently, is not a weight but a kind of spaciousness, a room large enough to rest in without ever needing to reach its far walls. The universe began, somehow, from something science cannot yet fully explain, and it has been unfolding ever since into stars, and galaxies, and quiet rooms like this one, holding you exactly as you are. You do not need to understand your own existence in order to enjoy it. You do not need to solve the universe in order to be held by it. So let the deepest question of all settle now, softly, into the back of your mind, unanswered and unafraid, and let us drift onward, into the deep and gentle dark that fills nearly everything there is. Let us turn now from the question of existence itself to a stranger and quieter mystery, the fact that almost everything in the universe, weighed and measured as carefully as we know how, seems to be made of something we cannot see. Not empty dark in the ordinary sense, the calm black between the stars we have already come to love, but an active, gravity-giving dark, wrapped through and around every galaxy, including our own. It is not a frightening dark. It has never once caused harm that anyone has measured. It has only ever held things together, patiently, the way a hand might rest, unseen, on a shoulder. Tonight we will drift through the two great darknesses of modern cosmology, the unseen mass that keeps galaxies spinning true, and the unseen push that is gently widening the universe itself. Both remain unexplained. Both are also, by every measurement we have, perfectly calm, perfectly steady, and utterly indifferent to whether we ever understand them. Let their vastness settle over you now, not as a puzzle to solve, but as a great soft blanket you happen to be wrapped in without ever having asked for it. When astronomers first carefully measured how fast the outer stars of spinning galaxies were moving, they found something that should not have been possible. By the visible matter alone, all the stars, all the glowing gas, everything bright enough to see and weigh, those outer stars were moving so quickly that they ought to have flung themselves loose long ago, scattering off into the dark like water off a fast-turning wheel. and yet they had not. Something unseen, and far more massive than everything visible combined, was holding them gently in their orbits, an invisible scaffolding of gravity wrapped around every galaxy we have ever measured, including our own. We call it dark matter, though the name is really just a polite admission that we do not know what it is. We only know that it is there, in enormous quantities, quietly keeping the stars of every galaxy from flying apart. It is not an unsettled or roaming thing. It is calm and steady, and has been holding galaxies together since long before there was anyone to wonder about it, or to ask, gently, why? For decades now, physicists have built extraordinarily careful experiments deep underground, shielded from ordinary cosmic noise, waiting in the dark for the faintest possible touch, hoping to catch a single dark matter particle passing through. They have proposed several patient candidates for what it might be strange, shy particles that interact with ordinary matter so rarely and so gently that trillions of them may be drifting through your own body at this very moment and through mine, without either of us ever noticing a thing. And yet, after all that careful watching, not one of these experiments has yet caught a confirmed direct touch. We know dark matter is there, from the way it gently shapes the galaxies. We still do not know, up close, what it actually is. It remains one of the largest genuine unknowns in all of physics, a whole invisible category of the universe, waiting patiently to be introduced. There is no urgency in the not knowing. The particles, whatever they are, continue quietly doing their gentle work, holding the galaxies steady, entirely unconcerned with whether we have found the right name for them yet. Some of the clearest evidence for this unseen mass comes from watching two great clusters of galaxies collide, for across the universe, in an event astronomers have gently nicknamed the Bullet Cluster. When ordinary glowing gas from the two clusters crashed together, it slowed and dragged and piled up in the middle, the way two crowds might tangle when they meet. But the invisible mass of each cluster, traced only by the faint way it bends the light of galaxies far behind it, passed straight through, barely slowed at all, and kept on going, calmly separating from the visible wreckage left behind. It was, for many scientists, one of the most convincing pictures yet that something real and massive and simply invisible truly is out there, behaving differently from ordinary matter, moving through the great collision almost untouched. It offered no explanation of what that invisible mass actually is. It only showed, gently and clearly, that it is real and that it moves to its own quiet rules, unbothered by the crash of ordinary matter happening all around it. For most of the 20th century, cosmologists assumed that the universe's expansion, however fast it had started, must be gradually slowing down over time, gently reined in by the mutual gravity of everything within it. Then, near the end of that century, astronomers watching the light of distant exploding stars found something no one expected. The expansion was not slowing at all. It was speeding up, gently and steadily, as though some quiet pressure were pushing the whole universe to stretch a little faster with every passing age. It was one of the great surprises of modern science, arriving softly, through careful and patient measurement rather than any dramatic event. We gave the mysterious push a name, dark energy, and we have measured its gentle effects again and again since, in different ways, all agreeing. But we still do not know, in any deep sense, what is actually doing the pushing. The universe, it seems, is not merely large. It is quietly, continuously growing larger, a little faster each age, for reasons we have measured carefully and still cannot fully explain. By the best estimates we have, this mysterious dark energy makes up close to 70% of everything in the entire universe, far more than all the stars, all the galaxies, all the dark matter, and all the ordinary matter of every kind, combined. Most of existence, in other words, is this quiet, unexplained pressure, gently widening the space between every galaxy, everywhere, all the time. Some physicists suspect it may simply be a property of empty space itself, a constant and steady hum built into the fabric of the vacuum. Others wonder if it changes, ever so slightly, over the long ages, and is not constant at all. No one yet knows which, if either, is correct. It is strange to hold, so gently, the thought that the greater part of everything that is remains a mystery to the very species that measured it into notice. But there is no fear needed in that thought, only a soft, wide humility, the comfortable kind, the kind that lets you rest without needing to have solved absolutely everything first. Because dark energy is gently widening the universe faster with every age that passes, the very long-term future of everything depends on properties we have not yet fully measured. Some models suggest the galaxies will simply drift apart, slowly and endlessly, growing farther and fainter from one another across trillions of years, in a future so distant that it belongs to no clock we could ever meaningfully read. Other models imagine gentler or stranger endings still. None of this is settled, and none of it needs to trouble you tonight, or any night soon. The timescales involved are so vast that human history, in its entirety, would be a single unnoticed flicker within them. Think of it, if it helps, the way you might think of the very old age of a beloved tree, real and true, and unimaginably far off, and no reason at all to lose a single night's sleep over it now. The universe has trillions of ordinary, unremarkable, softly expanding years ahead of it before any such question could ever matter. Tonight is simply, comfortably, one of them. When scientists measure how quickly the universe is expanding today, using the light of nearby exploding stars, they get one careful answer. When they measure it a different way, using the ancient afterglow left over from the universe's earliest age, they get another answer, slightly different, and stubbornly so, no matter how carefully each method is checked and rechecked. This small, persistent disagreement has come to be called the Hubble tension, and after years of patient double-checking, it still has not gone away. It may be pointing to some new piece of physics we have not yet found. It may simply be a subtle error, hiding somewhere in one of the methods, waiting to be caught. Either way, it is a rare and honest thing in science, a puzzle sitting quietly out in the open, unresolved, with careful people patiently working at it from every angle. There is nothing alarming in two careful measurements politely disagreeing. It only means the universe still has a few more of its numbers to reveal to us in its own unhurried time. Every galaxy, it seems, sits at the center of its own vast and invisible halo of dark matter, a great, soft, roughly spherical cloud of unseen mass, far larger than the bright disk of stars it surrounds, cradling it gently the way a hand might cradle a small flame against the wind. Without these unseen halos, our best calculations suggest that galaxies as we know them might never have been able to hold themselves together long enough to form at all. The visible matter alone may simply not have had enough gravity to gather itself into such graceful, long-lived shapes. So in a strange and gentle way, everything you have ever loved about the night sky, the spiral arms, the soft glow of distant galaxies, may owe its very existence to a substance no one has ever directly seen. The unseen, it turns out, is not merely present. It may be quietly responsible for holding together nearly everything we find beautiful enough to look up at on a clear and darkened night. Not every physicist is convinced that a whole new, invisible kind of matter is the right explanation for what we observe. A small and thoughtful minority have spent decades exploring another idea instead, that perhaps our understanding of gravity itself needs a gentle adjustment at the very largest scales, rather than assuming some vast unseen substance fills the gap. These modified gravity ideas can explain some of what we see remarkably well, and struggle in other places where dark matter succeeds more easily. Neither side has yet delivered the single decisive answer that would settle the question for good. It is one of the genuinely open debates in modern physics, carried on patiently, and mostly kindly, between careful people who simply weigh the same evidence a little differently. There is something reassuring in watching a real scientific question stay open this long, examined from every side, without anyone needing to force a premature ending. Some things are worth taking your time over. The universe itself has never once seemed to mind waiting for us to get it right. Added all together, the dark matter and the dark energy both, and by our best current estimates, well over 90% of everything in the universe is made of something we cannot directly see, and do not yet fully understand. Only a small, bright fraction, the stars, the planets, the gentle body you are resting in tonight, is made of the ordinary matter we know so well. It is a strange thing to hold, gently, as you drift toward sleep, that you are a small, lit, understood island, floating in an ocean of vast and patient mystery. And yet the mystery has never once been unkind to you. It has held your galaxy together for billions of years. It has stretched the universe gently outward, making room, endlessly, for more stars, more nights, more quiet rest. You do not need to see the dark to be held by it. You have been held by it, softly and completely, every single night of your life, whether you noticed it or not. We have drifted, now, through the two great darknesses of the universe, the unseen mass that holds the galaxies steady, and the unseen push that widens the space between them. Neither has ever been unfriendly to us. Both have simply gone on, quietly and immensely, doing their patient work, whether or not anyone below ever learned their names. There is a lesson in that worth carrying gently toward sleep, that not understanding something is not the same as being unsafe within it. You have spent your entire life held by forces you cannot see, and you have been perfectly fine. So let the dark matter keep its secrets a little longer. Let the dark energy go on with its slow, invisible work. And let yourself be held, just as gently, by everything about tonight that you do not need to understand in order to rest completely within it. Let us come closer now, closer than galaxies, closer than dark matter, closer than anything we have wondered about so far, all the way in, to the very quiet room behind your own eyes. For strange as it may sound, the mystery waiting there is at least as deep as anything out among the stars. You are aware. Right now, lying here, something in you is experiencing this moment, the weight of the blanket, the sound of these words, the soft dimming of the room around you, and no one, not the finest neuroscientist alive, can yet fully explain how mere matter, however cleverly arranged, comes to feel like something from the inside. It is called, gently, the mystery of mind, and it may be the deepest puzzle of all, precisely because you do not have to look anywhere far away to find it. It is here, now, being you. There is nothing to solve about it tonight. There is only, perhaps, a soft and curious kind of wonder to feel at the simple, astonishing fact of your own quiet awareness drifting gently toward sleep. Scientists can now watch, in remarkable detail, which parts of the brain light up when you see a color, or hear a sound, or feel a memory rising softly to the surface. What they cannot yet explain is why any of that quiet electrical activity should feel like anything at all, why there is an inner experience accompanying it, rather than the whole process simply happening in the dark, unfelt, the way a calculator adds numbers without ever once noticing that it has done so. Philosophers have come to call this gap the hard problem of consciousness, to set it apart from all the other, more answerable questions about how the brain works. We can map the wiring in extraordinary detail. We still cannot say, with any real confidence, how wiring becomes awareness. It is one of the very few mysteries in all of science that you are, quite literally, having right now, simply by lying here, noticing these words, and feeling, softly, that it is you doing the noticing. That noticing itself remains, gently, unexplained. Researchers have made real and steady progress finding what they call the neural correlates of consciousness, the specific patterns of brain activity that reliably appear whenever a person reports being aware of something, and that quiet or vanish when awareness fades, such as during deep, dreamless sleep. This has been careful, patient, valuable work, narrowing down where in the brain awareness seems to live, and what patterns of activity accompany it. But finding the correlate is not the same as finding the cause. Knowing which neurons fire when you feel warmth does not yet explain why firing neurons should produce the felt sense of warmth at all, rather than no felt sense whatsoever. It is a little like learning exactly which keys of a piano are pressed to make a certain chord, without ever explaining why pressed keys should make any sound at all. The correlation is real and useful, and growing more detailed every year. The deeper why is still, gently, waiting, and there is no need to wait up for it tonight. Every day, all over the world, doctors reliably switch off a person's consciousness with careful doses of anesthesia, and just as reliably bring it back again afterward, safely and completely. It is one of the great quiet triumphs of modern medicine, and yet, remarkably, no one fully understands how it actually works, at the deepest level, to make awareness simply stop, and then resume. We know which chemicals to use, and in what careful amounts, and we can watch, on a screen, the particular patterns that mark unconsciousness settling in. But precisely how those molecules reach in and pause the felt experience of being someone, cleanly, and then hand it back later without incident, remains only partly understood. It is strange to think that we can turn a mystery on and off, gently, in an operating room every single day, with more confidence than we can explain it. Sleep does something similar to you tonight, in its own softer way, no chemicals needed, only the quiet permission to let awareness rest for a while, and trust, calmly, that it will return. In a small number of careful medical cases, the thick band of nerve fibers connecting the brain's two halves has been surgically divided, usually to ease a serious illness, leaving each half of the brain to process much of its own information a little more independently than usual. In gentle, carefully designed experiments, researchers found that each half could, in certain narrow situations, behave almost as though it held its own separate stream of awareness, reaching different conclusions from the very same shown image. It raised a deep and quiet question that is still being turned over today, whether the single, unified sense of being one person, one continuous you, is something built in from the start, or something more delicately stitched together than it feels. Most days, for nearly all of us, the two halves work in easy, seamless harmony, and the question never even arises. But in those few careful studies, science caught a rare glimpse of how much quiet cooperation goes into the simple, comforting feeling of being whole. For a long time, scientists were cautious even to ask whether animals other than ourselves might have any inner experience at all, any felt sense of warmth, or hunger, or calm. In recent years, a great many careful researchers have come to agree that a wide range of animals, from mammals and birds down to some far simpler creatures, very likely do have some form of felt experience, even if we cannot yet say precisely what it is like to be them, or how it compares to our own. What kind of awareness a fish feels, or an octopus, or a small quiet dog dreaming at the foot of a bed, remains genuinely open and gently debated. We simply cannot climb inside another mind of any species to check directly. So we are left, patiently, with careful behavior and careful biology and careful humility, building, slowly, a kinder and more curious picture of just how much quiet awareness might be sharing this whole spinning world with you tonight. Some careful experiments, beginning decades ago, found that measurable brain activity linked to a simple decision sometimes appears to begin a fraction of a second before a person reports consciously choosing to act. It has led to a long, genuinely open debate about what our felt sense of choosing really is, and how it relates to the quiet, complex machinery working underneath it. Some researchers read this as evidence that our sense of choosing arrives a little later than we assume. Others argue the experiments are far too narrow to say anything so large about the whole of human choice and character. No one has settled it, and it may not be the sort of question a single experiment could ever fully settle. There is no need to hold this one tightly tonight, or to let it unsettle you. Whatever the deepest truth turns out to be, your evenings will go on including moments that feel, warmly and undeniably, like your own, this one among them, as you choose, softly, simply to rest. Right now, as you lie here, your brain is quietly combining an enormous number of separate signals, the softness beneath you, the sound of these words, perhaps the last soft edges of light behind your closed eyes, into one single, seamless experience of being here, in this moment, all at once. Different parts of the brain process color, and shape, and sound, and touch, almost entirely separately, in different regions, at slightly different speeds. And yet you never experience any of it as scattered pieces arriving late or out of order. Somehow it is all gathered, instantly and effortlessly, into one whole feeling of now. Scientists call this gentle mystery the binding problem, and no one yet fully understands how the brain manages such a smooth and seamless stitching. It happens without any effort on your part at all, thousands of times over, in every ordinary minute of your life. Whatever binds it all so gently together is, tonight, quietly doing its patient work again, weaving these words and this softness into one single, restful experience of you. There is a particular, private texture to every experience, the way blue looks to you, the way a low, warm hum sounds, the particular hush of settling into a soft bed at the end of a long day, and philosophers have a gentle word for these inner textures, qualia. No one has ever found a way to directly compare your inner sense of a color, or a feeling, with anyone else's, even though we can measure, in extraordinary detail, the light waves and the brain activity involved. It is entirely possible that the soft blue you have always known is subtly different from the blue someone else quietly carries in their own mind, and neither of you would ever be able to tell. It is one of the gentlest, most private mysteries there is, tucked inside every single one of us, all the time, unprovable and unshareable, and yet somehow completely certain from the inside. You alone know exactly what this quiet, drowsy feeling is like right now. No test could ever measure it for you. It is simply, softly, yours. As computers have grown steadily more capable of holding conversations, recognizing faces, and solving problems once thought to require a human mind, a very old question has quietly returned with new urgency. Could a machine, built cleverly enough, ever have an inner experience of its own, rather than simply behaving, very convincingly, as though it did? No one has found a way to test for it directly, because the same hard problem that makes human consciousness so difficult to explain makes it just as difficult to detect from the outside, in anyone or anything. Some researchers suspect awareness may depend on the particular living material of a brain, and could never arise in silicon. Others believe it may be the pattern of information, not the material, that matters, and that awareness could in principle appear almost anywhere the right pattern occurs. No one yet knows which view, if either, is right. It remains a wide open and gently debated frontier, one more soft mystery, waiting patiently, at the edge of an already very mysterious mind. So here is the strangest and closest mystery of the whole long night, that you are aware at all. Not why you think this thought instead of another, or why you remember this and forget that, but the simple, foundational fact that there is something it is like to be you, lying here, rather than nothing at all, that the universe, somewhere along its long and patient unfolding, learned to feel itself from the inside, in you, and in every other quietly aware creature drifting toward sleep across the turning world tonight. No scientist has fully explained it. No philosopher has fully closed it. And you do not need it explained in order to enjoy it. You may simply notice, softly, that you are noticing, and let that be enough, and let it carry you, gently, without any need to solve it, all the way down toward the soft and dreamless dark. We have come, now, as close to home as any mystery can bring us, all the way into the quiet fact of your own awareness, unexplained and yet perfectly, warmly familiar. There is something deeply restful in a mystery you do not have to travel anywhere to find. It has been with you your whole life, patient and unsolved, asking nothing of you but to be noticed now and then, gently, and let go again. So let it go now. You do not need to understand consciousness to rest inside it, any more than you need to understand a river to float upon it. Let your own quiet awareness soften at its edges, blur a little at the corners, and drift, unhurried, toward whatever waits on the other side of noticing. The mystery of mind will still be here tomorrow, exactly as patient as it is tonight. For now, simply rest inside it, and let us drift onward, toward the mystery of sleep itself. There is something wonderfully fitting about the mystery we come to now, because it is happening to you at this very moment. Sleep. The strange, universal, faintly ridiculous fact that every night, billions of creatures across the world quietly switch off their awareness of the world around them, lie still and vulnerable in the dark, and drift for hours into a state that science still cannot fully explain. It seems, on the face of it, like a dangerous thing for evolution to have kept around, all that unguarded stillness, all that lost time. And yet every animal we have ever studied carefully enough seems to do some version of it in its own way. So as your own eyes grow heavier and your own breathing slows toward that same old, universal rhythm, know that you are not drifting into something poorly understood despite science, but into one of its gentlest and most companionable open questions, one that every sleeping creature on Earth is quietly, patiently helping to answer, simply by doing, tonight, exactly what you are about to do. From the outside, sleep looks like a strange evolutionary risk. For hours at a time, an animal lies still, mostly blind to danger, unable to hunt or flee or watch for predators, in a state that leaves it about as vulnerable as a creature can be. And yet sleep, in some form, appears to exist in almost every animal we have ever studied closely enough to check, a sign that whatever it does for the body and the mind must be valuable enough to be worth all that risk, night after night, across the whole of evolutionary history. Scientists have proposed a great many gentle explanations: that it restores the body, tidies the mind, saves energy, or repairs small damage accumulated during the day, and each explanation seems to capture some real part of the truth, without any single one fully accounting for why sleep, rather than some safer alternative, was the solution life kept returning to, again and again, in creature after creature, for hundreds of millions of years. One of the clearest and best supported ideas about sleep is that it helps the brain quietly sort through the day, strengthening certain memories, letting others fade, and gently weaving new experience in among everything already stored. Careful studies have shown that people who sleep after learning something new often remember it more clearly than people who stay awake, as though the sleeping brain were tidying a desk overnight, filing away what matters and clearing off what does not. But precisely how this sorting happens, which memories are chosen, and by what quiet process, is still only partly understood, an active and lively area of ongoing research. It is a comforting thought to carry toward sleep itself, that somewhere behind your closing eyes, a slow and careful librarian is already beginning its gentle nightly work, deciding, patiently and without your help, what from today is worth keeping. Some researchers believe that one of sleep's quiet jobs is to gently turn down the volume on the countless small connections between brain cells that grew a little too loud during a busy waking day, a kind of nightly pruning, trimming back what grew wild, so that tomorrow's new learning has room to take root without the whole system growing overcrowded. It is sometimes called the synaptic homeostasis idea, and it fits a good deal of the evidence rather well, though it remains one hypothesis among several, not yet the single settled answer. Other researchers emphasize different, complementary roles for sleep instead, and the truth may well include a little of everything anyone has proposed. Either way, there is something quietly lovely in the image, an unseen gardener, moving softly through the mind each night, trimming back the overgrowth, so that everything you plant tomorrow has a little more room to grow. Only in the last couple of decades have scientists discovered that the brain has its own quiet cleaning system, one that seems to work mainly while you sleep, a slow, gentle flow of fluid that washes through the spaces between brain cells, carrying away the small waste products that build up during a busy waking day. Researchers have found this clearing process to be markedly more active during sleep than during wakefulness, as though the brain, once the lights are down and the demands of the day have quieted, finally has the room and the calm to take out its own trash. Exactly how the process is switched on, and how much it truly matters for long-term health, is still being carefully mapped. But it is a tender thought to hold as you drift off, that behind your closed eyes, right now, a soft and unhurried tide is beginning to rise and fall, quietly washing the day's small residue away, so that tomorrow can begin a little cleaner than tonight. Almost everyone dreams, every single night, whether or not they remember it by morning, and yet why the sleeping brain bothers to construct these vivid, strange, wandering little stories at all remains one of the gentlest unresolved questions in the whole of neuroscience. Some researchers believe dreaming helps process difficult emotions in a safer, quieter setting than waking life allows. Others suspect it helps rehearse responses to danger, or strengthen memories, or simply reflects the brain's activity as it sorts through the day with the lights turned low. None of these ideas has yet won out completely, and it may be that dreaming serves several soft purposes at once, or purposes we have not yet thought to look for. Either way, whatever quiet story your own mind chooses to tell itself tonight, it will be doing something ancient and universal, something every sleeping mind before yours has also done, unexplained and unbothered, for as long as there have been minds to dream at all. Why a dream takes the particular shape it does, why a familiar room turns strange, why a person from years ago reappears without surprise, why entirely impossible things feel completely ordinary while they are happening, is something science still cannot fully explain. We know a good deal about which brain regions are especially active during dreaming, and which are unusually quiet, including the parts that ordinarily handle careful logic and self-control, which may explain some of the dream's gentle absurdity. But why the mind assembles precisely this scene, and not another, out of the vast library of a lifetime's memories, remains mostly mysterious. There is something soothing in that not knowing. If you let it be, your dreams tonight, whatever shape they take, will be entirely your own private invention, unwritten and unplanned, arriving from somewhere in you that no scientist has ever fully mapped, and needing no explanation at all in order to be gently, harmlessly enjoyed. Sleep, or something remarkably like it, has now been found in nearly every animal careful enough scientists have thought to study, not only in mammals and birds, but in fish and insects, and even in small, brainless creatures like jellyfish, which nonetheless show quiet, restful periods with all the hallmarks of true sleep. That something so costly and vulnerable should have been kept, independently, across such an enormous and ancient span of the animal kingdom, suggests it must be doing something deeply important, even in creatures with no brain at all to consolidate memories in the way we do. What that shared, ancient purpose truly is remains an open and gently debated question, reaching back, perhaps, further into the history of life than almost anything else we know for certain. Whatever sleep first was for, hundreds of millions of years ago, in some ancient, simple creature drifting in a warm sea, you are doing a very old and very trusted thing tonight, simply by closing your eyes. Some animals have found a remarkable solution to the vulnerability of sleep. They simply do it with only half of their brain at a time. Dolphins, and a number of birds, are able to let one half of the brain rest quietly in deep sleep while the other half stays alert, keeping one eye open, literally, to watch for danger or to keep swimming steadily onward. Migrating birds have even been observed sleeping this way in short bursts while still in flight, resting each half of the brain in turn across a long journey. How the brain manages to divide its rest so cleanly, and to keep switching sides without ever losing the thread of consciousness entirely, is still being carefully studied. It is a gentle reminder that rest can take many shapes, and does not always look the way we assume. Some creatures have simply learned to keep part of themselves softly watching, even while another part lets go completely into sleep. Every so often, a sleeping mind becomes aware, briefly and strangely, that it is dreaming, able, in that curious in-between state, to notice the dream as a dream, and sometimes even to gently steer its course. Scientists have confirmed that this lucid dreaming genuinely happens, using careful signals dreamers can send with their eyes while their body otherwise remains still and asleep. But how the brain manages to hold two seemingly contradictory things at once, the full immersive unreality of a dream and a calm, clear awareness that it is only a dream, is not yet well understood, and sits, quietly, at the crossing point of two of the biggest mysteries in this whole chapter, sleep and consciousness itself. You do not need to chase such an experience tonight. If your mind simply drifts into ordinary, unremembered dreaming, that is exactly enough, and exactly as mysterious, in its own quiet way, as anything more elaborate. So here is a small, gentle thought to hold as your own eyes grow heavy. The very thing you are about to do, right now, sliding down into sleep, remains one of the true unsolved mysteries of science, studied for over a century by careful and dedicated researchers who still cannot fully explain why it evolved, or how dreaming truly works, or what happens, precisely, in the last soft moments before awareness lets go. And yet none of that not knowing has ever once stopped it from working. You do not need to understand sleep to fall into it, any more than a river needs to understand gravity to flow downhill. Every night of your life, you have quietly performed one of nature's great unexplained wonders, without any effort, and without any need for the explanation to arrive first. Let it happen again now, exactly the same trusted way it always has. We have wandered, now, through one of the gentlest and closest mysteries there is, sleep itself, and the soft, strange world of dreams that comes with it, still only partly explained after all this careful study. And perhaps that is the most comforting thing of all to carry forward, that you do not need a finished theory in order to be extremely good at something. Every creature that has ever slept succeeded at it long before anyone thought to ask how. Your own body already knows exactly what to do. It has done it every night of your life, without fail, without instructions, without needing to understand a single one of the mysteries we have just wandered through. So let it do that work again now. Let your breathing settle into its old, familiar rhythm, and let the ancient, unexplained, perfectly reliable process of sleep begin quietly claiming you, exactly as it always has. Let us drift back now, gently, to a much older night than this one, to the very early Earth, billions of years ago, when the whole planet was quieter and stranger, and entirely without a single living thing upon it. Somewhere in that ancient dark, ordinary, lifeless chemistry, water, and minerals, and simple molecules drifting in warm shallow pools or deep beneath the sea, somehow crossed a soft and mysterious threshold, and became, for the first time, alive. It is one of the oldest events in the whole history of our world, and also one of the least understood, precisely because it left almost no trace behind for us to study directly. The very first living things were far too small, and far too long ago, to leave behind anything so simple as a fossil. So scientists have had to work backward instead, patiently, from careful chemistry and careful reasoning, trying to reconstruct a single quiet crossing that happened once, billions of years back, in the deep dark, before there was anyone at all to notice that anything had changed. The step from ordinary, non-living chemistry to the first true living cell is called abiogenesis, and despite more than a century of careful research, no one has yet been able to say, with full confidence, exactly how it happened on the early Earth. We know a great deal about the ingredients that were likely available. water, simple carbon-based molecules, warmth, and time, an enormous amount of patient time. And we have learned, in careful laboratories, that many of the small building blocks of life can form quite readily under the right gentle conditions. But the full path from those loose ingredients to something that could grow and copy itself and begin, however simply, to be alive, has never been fully retraced. It remains one of the deepest open questions in all of science, not whether life began from non-life, which nearly all evidence supports, but exactly how, in what patient sequence of small, quiet steps, it managed to cross that remarkable threshold. One of the leading and most carefully studied ideas is called the RNA world hypothesis, the notion that before the elaborate machinery of modern cells existed, a simpler molecule called RNA may have done double duty, both storing simple genetic information and helping to carry out basic chemical reactions, all on its own, without any of the other partners life relies on today. Scientists have shown, in careful experiments, that RNA is indeed capable of both these jobs to some degree, which makes the idea an elegant and appealing one. But whether this is truly how life began, and how such molecules first arose and organized themselves without any larger cell to protect them, remains genuinely unresolved. It is a hypothesis held with real respect and real uncertainty, in careful balance, one gentle guess, among a few others, about the earliest and quietest chapter of life's whole long story. Decades ago, in a now famous experiment, two careful scientists filled a sealed glass apparatus with the simple gases thought to resemble the early Earth's atmosphere, added water to mimic a shallow sea, and passed small sparks through the mixture to imitate ancient lightning. Within just a week, without any living thing involved at all, the mixture had produced several of the basic building blocks that go into making proteins, a striking and hopeful sign that the raw materials of life could indeed arise from simple, ordinary chemistry, given only the right gentle conditions and enough patient time. It did not create life itself, and it did not settle the question of exactly how the early Earth's atmosphere was truly composed. But it offered real, careful evidence that the gap between non-living chemistry and the ingredients of life may not be as vast as it first appears, a small, hopeful spark of an answer, glowing quietly at the edge of a much larger mystery. Where, exactly, on the early Earth this remarkable crossing first happened is itself a genuinely open question. Some researchers favor warm, shallow pools on land, gently heated by sunlight and occasionally dried and re-wet, which may have helped simple molecules link together into longer chains. Others point instead to the deep sea floor, near hydrothermal vents where warm, mineral-rich water rises quietly through cracks in the rock, offering a steady source of energy and chemistry far from the disturbances of the surface above. Both settings have their careful supporters, and both have produced promising results in the laboratory. No one has yet found a way to confirm which environment, if either alone, was the true cradle of the very first life. It may even be that different attempts happened in several such places, quietly, before one of them finally succeeded. The Earth, it seems, was patient enough to try more than once. For anything to be considered truly alive, in even the simplest sense, it likely needed some kind of boundary, a thin membrane separating its own delicate inner chemistry from the vast ocean outside, so that useful molecules could be kept close and gathered rather than drifting endlessly away. Scientists have shown that simple fatty molecules can spontaneously arrange themselves into small, hollow spheres remarkably like the membranes of modern cells, forming and reforming on their own without any guidance at all. Whether such simple spheres were truly the first step toward a living cell, or one of several ideas being carefully tested, is not yet settled. It is a small, quiet image to hold, though. However, it turns out that somewhere in that ancient, patient chemistry, something first learned to draw a gentle boundary around itself, however soft and simple, and in doing so took one of the smallest and largest steps that has ever been taken. Nearly every molecule that makes up your body today comes in one particular mirror image shape rather than its equally possible twin. Your proteins are built almost entirely from left-handed versions of their building blocks, while the sugars in your genetic material lean almost entirely to the right. Ordinary chemistry, left to itself, tends to produce roughly equal amounts of both mirror shapes, with no obvious preference either way. And yet life, somewhere at its very beginning, chose overwhelmingly one hand over the other, and has kept that choice with remarkable consistency ever since, in every living thing we have ever examined. Why that early tipping happened, and why it happened so decisively and so early that it has never since been undone, remains a genuinely open and rather charming little mystery. It is as though, at the very start of everything, life quietly decided to favor one hand, for reasons of its own that it has never once explained to us. By carefully comparing the genetic material of living things across the whole tree of life, scientists have been able to reconstruct a rough picture of a single, ancient ancestor, shared by absolutely everything alive today, that likely lived several billion years ago, a simple, single-celled creature scientists gently call Luca, the last universal common ancestor. We have learned a surprising amount about what it may have looked like, and what basic chemistry it likely relied on. But Luca itself was not the very first living thing, it was simply the last common branching point we can still trace clearly, with countless earlier chapters of life's beginning lost entirely to time, leaving very large and very old gaps in the story before it. It is a strange comfort, in its way, that however far back we manage to trace our shared beginning, there is still a deeper, quieter chapter further back still, patiently keeping its secrets. Among the more unusual, but genuinely respected, ideas in this whole quiet field is the notion that some of the raw building blocks of life, or conceivably even hardy, simple forms of life themselves, might not have originated on Earth at all, but arrived here from elsewhere in space, carried gently within comets or meteorites during the solar system's early, chaotic youth. This idea, called panspermia, is taken seriously by a good number of careful scientists, in part because we have indeed found simple organic molecules, the basic carbon-based building blocks of life, inside meteorites that have fallen to Earth. It does not answer where life ultimately began in the first place, since it simply moves the question elsewhere in the cosmos. But it remains a genuinely open possibility, gently reminding us that Earth's own night sky may have delivered, quietly and long ago, some of the very ingredients from which you yourself were eventually made. Perhaps the deepest question tucked inside this whole gentle mystery is simply this: was the origin of life something close to inevitable, likely to happen wherever the right ordinary chemistry and warmth and time came together, anywhere in the universe? Or was it an extraordinarily rare, unfortunate accident, a single lucky crossing that might never happen again, even given 1,000 more worlds and 1,000 more chances? No one yet knows. Some scientists point to how quickly life seems to have appeared on the young Earth as a hint that it may not be so very difficult after all. Others note how vanishingly delicate and specific the necessary steps appear to be. It remains, honestly and openly, unresolved, one of the largest unanswered questions connecting the smallest chemistry to the largest cosmic questions of how much company we might have out there among the stars. And so, whatever the full and careful answer turns out to be, one thing remains gently certain: somewhere, sometime, in the deep and patient dark of the early Earth, lifeless chemistry crossed a threshold that led, eventually, across billions of years of slow unfolding, all the way to you, to this body, breathing quietly in the dark, to this mind, drifting gently toward sleep. You are the far end of an unbroken thread that stretches back to a single, quiet, still mysterious beginning, billions of years ago, that no scientist has yet fully explained. You do not need the explanation in hand to feel the wonder of it. You are, simply and completely, proof that it happened, however it happened, and that is enough, tonight, to let you rest, gently, inside a mystery so old it began before there was any land at all to call the Earth. We have looked, now, all the way back to the beginning of life itself, to a threshold science can describe in outline, but still cannot fully explain in its quiet particulars. And there is something soothing in that, if you let it settle, that the deepest mystery of biology is not some dramatic catastrophe, but a slow, patient, gentle becoming, unfolding over unthinkable stretches of time, in warm and quiet places, long before there was any hurry in the world at all. You carry that same patience within you now, whether you notice it or not. Every cell in your body is still, in its own way, continuing that same ancient, unhurried project, keeping you alive through the night without needing your attention, or your understanding, or your help. Let it continue, quietly, exactly as it has for billions of years. And let us drift onward now, into an even older and stranger question still, the mystery of time itself. Let us turn now to something so familiar that we rarely think to wonder at it, time itself, the quiet river we have been drifting along together this whole evening, carrying us gently from one soft thought to the next. We measure it constantly, with clocks, and calendars, and the slow settling of this very night. And yet, when physicists and philosophers look closely at what time actually is, rather than merely how to measure it, the answers grow soft, and strange, and genuinely unresolved. Why does time seem to flow in only one direction, from past to future, when so many of the deepest laws of physics do not appear to care about direction at all? What is happening, in this very moment, that makes it feel like now rather than some other instant entirely? These are not settled questions, and they may never fully be. But there is no need for that unsettledness to trouble you tonight. Whatever time truly is, it has been carrying you gently forward, without incident, for every moment of your life so far, and it will go on doing so, quietly, exactly the same, long after you have fallen asleep. Physics can tell you, with extraordinary precision, how time behaves, how it slows down gently near a massive object, how two clocks can drift apart by tiny fractions of a second depending on their speed and place, how it is woven together with space itself into a single, flexible fabric. What physics has never quite managed to explain is what time actually is, underneath all that careful behavior, whether it is a real, fundamental thread woven into the universe from the very beginning, or something gentler and more constructed, arising out of simpler underlying processes the way warmth arises out of the busy jostling of countless small particles. We can measure time beautifully. We can predict it with remarkable accuracy. But asking someone to explain its true, deepest nature still tends to produce a long, thoughtful pause, even among the very people who study it for a living. It is comforting, in a way, to rest inside something so useful and so intimate and still so gently mysterious. Almost all of the fundamental equations of physics work equally well running forward or running backward in time, describing a world that, on paper, does not seem to prefer one direction over the other at all. And yet everything around you clearly does prefer a direction. Eggs break and do not unbreak. Candles burn down and do not burn back up, and you yourself are growing gently sleepier as the night goes forward, never the reverse. Physicists explain much of this by pointing to entropy, the tendency of things to drift, over time, toward more spread out, less ordered arrangements. But why the universe began, at its very earliest moment, in such a remarkably ordered state in the first place, giving entropy such a very long, one-directional slope to climb ever since, remains a genuinely open question. The arrow of time, it turns out, points as clearly as it does for reasons we still do not fully understand, even as it carries you, gently and irreversibly, one soft moment further into sleep. One of the strangest and best confirmed facts about time is that there is no single, universal now shared by the whole universe at once. According to relativity, two people moving differently, or standing in different amounts of gravity, will genuinely, measurably disagree about which of two distant events happened first, and neither of them is simply mistaken, both are correct, from where they stand. It has been tested again and again, with careful clocks flown on airplanes and carried to mountaintops, and it holds up every time. It means that the tidy, shared present moment we all feel so certain of, this very instant, is in some deep sense a comfortable illusion of our slow, ordinary lives, rather than a universal fact written into the cosmos. And yet, comforting or not, it changes nothing about how gently this particular now, yours and mine, is settling over you, right here, in your own small corner of the universe's vast and flexible fabric of time. Some physicists and philosophers take relativity's strange lessons about time even further, suggesting that past, present, and future may all, in some deep sense, be equally real all at once, a single vast, unmoving structure sometimes called the block universe, in which your childhood and your old age both simply exist, timelessly, the way different rooms exist in the same house, and the feeling of time passing is simply your own slow movement through it. Others disagree entirely, arguing that only this present moment is truly real, with the past gone and the future not yet arrived. Both positions are argued carefully by serious thinkers, and neither has definitively won. It is a rare and rather lovely kind of mystery, one where the disagreement changes nothing at all about how it feels, right now, gently, to be here, drifting toward sleep in whichever kind of universe, block or flowing, this quiet moment turns out to belong to. You remember yesterday, softly and easily, and you cannot remember tomorrow at all, no matter how hard you try, an asymmetry so completely ordinary that it rarely seems worth wondering about. And yet explaining exactly why memory only ever points backward, tying it fully and precisely to the same deep physics that makes time flow in one direction, remains a genuinely active and unfinished area of careful research. Some of the connection is understood, the full, satisfying picture is not. It is one of the gentlest paradoxes of the whole evening that the very faculty letting you recall these last few dozen quiet facts is itself, at its deepest level, not yet completely explained. You do not need the explanation to keep remembering, of course, any more than you need it to keep sleeping. The past will go on settling softly behind you, the same trustworthy direction it always has, whether or not the deepest reason for it has yet been fully written down. Down at the smallest scales, where quantum mechanics describes the strange behavior of particles, time is treated rather differently than it is in relativity's flexible, woven fabric of space and time together. In quantum mechanics, time tends to be handled more like a fixed background, a steady stage on which the stranger action unfolds, rather than something that can bend and stretch the way relativity says it should. Physicists have not yet found a single, fully agreed way to reconcile these two different pictures of time into one seamless theory, and unifying them remains one of the largest and most patient projects in all of physics. It is, in a way, a very grown-up kind of unresolved question. Two of our best and most carefully tested theories, each describing time a little differently, both clearly capturing something true, neither one yet willing to fully agree with the other. The universe, it seems, has not yet finished explaining itself to us, even about something as constant as time. We touched, earlier tonight, on the question of what came before the Big Bang, and it belongs here again, gently, in this chapter about time itself, because some physicists suspect the question may not quite make sense as asked, if time itself began at that same moment, leaving no earlier before for anything to have happened in. Others are not so sure, and have proposed various gentle ideas about what might have preceded our universe, or given rise to it, though none of these ideas has yet been tested or confirmed. It remains wide open, sitting right at the tender edge of what our current understanding of time can even meaningfully ask about. There is something almost restful in a question that might not even be a real question, a puzzle so deep it reaches back before the very idea of before existed. You need not solve it. You may simply let it rest there, at the very edge of thought, and drift quietly past it. In recent years, physicists have managed to create a genuinely strange new state of matter called a time crystal, in which a small group of particles settles into a pattern that repeats itself steadily over time, all on its own, without using up any energy to do so, much the way an ordinary crystal repeats its structure steadily through space. It sounds almost like a small, quiet perpetual motion, though physicists are careful to say it does not break any of the deep rules of physics. It is simply a new and unexpected way for matter to behave, discovered only very recently, and still being patiently explored and understood. What it may eventually teach us about the deeper nature of time is not yet clear. For now, it remains a small, genuine, freshly discovered wonder, tucked at the frontier of physics, proof that even something as constantly studied as time can still, every so often, quietly surprise the very people who have spent their whole careers examining it. Some of the most ambitious physicists working today, trying to unite quantum mechanics and gravity into one deeper theory, have begun to wonder whether time itself might not be a basic ingredient of reality at all, but something that emerges, gently, out of a deeper and more timeless layer underneath, the way temperature emerges from the busy motion of countless small particles, without being a fundamental thing in itself. If this turns out to be true, time as we feel it, flowing steadily forward, carrying you gently toward sleep, would be something like a very convincing, very consistent illusion, arising out of something stranger and quieter beneath it. No one yet knows if this is correct, and it remains one of the most genuinely open frontiers in all of physics. And yet, illusion or fundamental fact, it makes no difference at all to how real and how gentle this particular moment feels, right now, as it carries you, however it truly works, one soft breath further into rest. So time remains, after all our careful looking, one of the deepest and gentlest mysteries there is, familiar beyond question, and yet strange beyond full understanding, the moment you look at it closely enough. And perhaps that is exactly as it should be, tonight of all nights. You do not need to know what time fundamentally is in order to let it carry you gently forward, the way you do not need to understand a river to let it carry a small boat downstream. It has carried you, faithfully, through every moment of your life so far, without ever once dropping you, and it will carry you now, just as gently, through the rest of this soft and unhurried night. Let it flow however it truly flows, forward, or emergent, or bound up timelessly with everything that ever was and will be. Whatever the truth turns out to be, this particular moment, right now, is exactly, softly, enough. We have drifted, now, through the strange and gentle mystery of time itself, familiar as breathing, and yet, looked at closely, still resisting a full and final explanation. There is something fitting in ending here, this deep in the night, with the very thing that has been carrying us all evening, quietly refusing to be fully pinned down. But you have never needed to understand time in order to be held by it, and you do not need to understand it now, in order to let it carry you the rest of the way towards sleep. Let each passing moment simply be enough, without asking it to explain itself. Let the strange, patient river keep flowing, gently, underneath you, carrying you forward the way it always has. And let us lift our eyes once more, now, out and away from questions of time and mind, back out toward the wide and signaling dark of the cosmos itself. Let us lift our gaze again now, up and outward, away from questions of mind and time, back out into the vast dark where the cosmos itself sends us its own quiet, unexplained signals. Space is not silent, however still it looks. All across the sky, instruments tuned to catch the faintest whispers of radio light, and the highest energy particles there are, keep picking up brief, strange transmissions from far away, sudden flashes, odd dimmings, mysterious tugs on whole clusters of galaxies that our best science has not yet fully traced back to their cause. None of it is anything to brace against. These are not warnings, and they carry no message meant for us. They are simply the ordinary, echoing noise of an enormous and ancient universe, going about its business, some of it stranger than we have learned to explain just yet. Let your mind drift loosely among these open signals now, the way you might listen, half asleep, to a far-off radio playing quietly in another room, present and curious and utterly unthreatening. Scattered across the sky, astronomers keep catching brief, brilliant flashes of radio light called fast radio bursts, each one lasting only a few thousandths of a second, yet carrying, in that instant, as much energy as our sun releases over an entire day. They arrive from galaxies unimaginably far away, and most of them have been seen only once, flaring and vanishing before any telescope can look closely enough to say for certain what caused them. A few sources repeat, flashing again and again over months or years, which has helped narrow down some possible explanations, including certain especially magnetic dead stars. But a full, agreed account of what produces every one of these brief cosmic flashes still eludes us. They remain one of the more genuinely mysterious signals we regularly receive from deep space, quick, bright, and gone, like a single distant firefly blinking once across an entire ocean of dark, and then never explaining itself any further. What makes fast radio bursts even stranger is that some of them repeat, flashing from the very same distant point in the sky again and again, sometimes in odd, ticking patterns that themselves are not yet understood, while the great majority seem to flash only once and never again. Scientists are not certain whether these are simply two different kinds of event with two different causes, or one single kind of source behaving in two different moods, calm most of the time and only occasionally prone to repeating. Careful catalogues are slowly growing, patiently gathering evidence, and each new detection adds one more small piece to a puzzle that is not yet complete. There is no urgency in it from here. Whatever violent, brilliant, and rare occurrence out among the distant galaxies is producing these signals, it is happening at a safe and unimaginable distance, arriving to us only as the gentlest and briefest static, easily lost beneath the sound of your own slow breathing. Our own galaxy, along with thousands of others nearby, appears to be gently drifting toward a single, enormous, unseen concentration of mass that astronomers have nicknamed the Great Attractor, a region so thoroughly hidden behind the crowded, dusty plane of our own Milky Way that we can only infer its pull rather than see it directly. We can measure how strongly it tugs at everything around it, and estimate roughly where it lies, but a clear, detailed picture of what it actually contains remains stubbornly behind that veil of dust and stars. It is a strange thing to hold gently, an entire, massive structure quietly steering the drift of galaxies, including our own, that we have never been able to look at plainly, only feel, the way you might feel a draft from a door you cannot quite see, somewhere behind you in a dark and unfamiliar room. There is no danger in that gentle, ancient, unhurried pull. It has been drawing us along for a very long time, slowly, and without the smallest urgency. In the late 1970s, a radio telescope listening quietly to the sky recorded a brief, unusually strong burst of radio signal, lasting just over a minute, so far beyond what the instrument normally detected that the astronomer reviewing the printout circled it and wrote a single word beside it in the margin: "Wow." Despite careful searching in the years since, that particular signal has never been detected again from the same patch of sky, and no one has ever settled on a fully confirmed explanation for what produced it. It remains, honestly and simply, an unexplained blip in the historical record, not evidence of anything beyond our current science, but an honest gap where the data ran out before the explanation could catch up. It is a small, real mystery, tucked quietly into the archives, reminding us that even amid decades of careful listening, the sky still holds a few brief moments that have not yet given up their full story. In the early 1990s, a detector built to study cosmic rays recorded a single subatomic particle striking the Earth's atmosphere with an energy so enormous that scientists nicknamed it, half in astonishment, the "oh my god" particle, carrying roughly as much energy as a thrown baseball, all packed into one particle far smaller than an atom. No known process in any nearby galaxy seems capable of producing something with quite that much energy, and yet there it was, measured clearly, arriving from some direction in deep space that offered no obvious nearby source at all. A handful of similarly extreme particles have been caught since, each one a small, genuine puzzle, hinting at some tremendously powerful and still unidentified cosmic engine out there in the dark. It is humbling to think that something so vanishingly small could carry a story so large, and that the story remains, for now, gently and safely untold. A few years ago, astronomers noticed that one particular, ordinary-looking star was dimming in strange, irregular ways unlike anything seen before, sometimes losing as much as a fifth of its light for days at a time, in patterns that did not match any of the usual, well-understood causes such as a passing planet. It set off years of careful, curious study, with researchers proposing and testing a whole range of gentle explanations, from uneven clouds of orbiting dust to the debris of a broken-up comet. The evidence gathered since has increasingly favored some kind of drifting dust or debris as the most likely cause, though a fully complete and universally agreed explanation has still not quite been settled. It remains a lovely small case study in how science works, patient, curious, willing to consider many gentle possibilities, slowly narrowing an odd and genuine puzzle down toward its most probable answer, without any need to rush toward a dramatic one. Every so often, instruments watching the sky catch an extraordinarily brief, extraordinarily powerful flash of gamma rays, the most energetic form of light there is, arriving from some far distant corner of the universe and lasting anywhere from a fraction of a second to several minutes. Many of these gamma-ray bursts are now reasonably well linked to specific, dramatic events, the collapse of a massive dying star, or the merging of two extremely dense, compact stars far away. But a meaningful fraction of the bursts we detect do not fit neatly into either familiar category, leaving their precise origin still gently uncertain. Astronomers continue, patiently, to sort these strange signals into clearer families, refining their understanding a little with each new detection. Whatever produced any single one of these brief, brilliant flashes happened at a distance so vast that its light took millions or billions of years just to reach us, old news, arriving softly from an event long since settled and gone. The faint, ancient afterglow left over from the universe's early history, spread evenly across the entire sky, has been mapped with extraordinary care by careful satellites, and it matches our best cosmological models remarkably well almost everywhere. But a few odd, subtle patterns in that great map have never quite gone away under closer scrutiny, small, unexpected alignments and irregularities that some researchers have gently, half-jokingly nicknamed peculiar anomalies, hinting perhaps at some overlooked detail in our instruments, or perhaps at some deeper feature of the universe we have not yet identified. No one is alarmed by them. They are simply small stubborn wrinkles in an otherwise beautifully smooth and well-understood picture, patiently re-examined every time a new and more careful telescope looks again. Science is comfortable holding a nearly perfect answer that still has a few soft, unresolved edges. There is room, in careful understanding, for a little permanent gentle puzzlement. Within that same ancient afterglow, astronomers found one particular patch of sky unusually and stubbornly colder than everywhere around it, our broad, faint region sometimes called simply the cold spot, larger and cooler than ordinary statistical variation alone would easily predict. Some researchers suspect it may mark an enormous, unusually empty region of space lying between us and that ancient light, gently dimming what passes through it. Others are not convinced that explanation accounts for the whole effect, and the discussion continues, carefully and without any great urgency, in the quiet, patient way most of cosmology proceeds. It is, in its own way, a single cool, calm patch in the sky's oldest surviving photograph, unexplained, unthreatening, and strangely peaceful to imagine, one small, colder corner of the ancient universe, holding its own quiet secret, exactly the way a single shaded spot might rest, cool and calm, in an otherwise sunlit field. So the cosmos, for all that we have learned about it, is still quietly sending us signals we cannot fully explain, brief radio flashes, unexplained tugs of gravity, strange particles, and stranger patches of ancient light. None of it has ever once reached down and touched this quiet room, or troubled this quiet night, or asked anything at all of you. It is simply the sound of a vast and endlessly curious universe, still speaking a little faster than we can always translate, in a language we are patiently, gently learning to understand a little better with every passing year. You do not need to decode a single one of these signals tonight. You may simply let them pass overhead, like far-off traffic heard through a closed window, distant and harmless and softly reassuring in its very distance, while you rest here, safe, in the quiet room these signals will never quite reach. We have listened, for a little while, to the cosmos's own quiet static, its flashes and tugs, and unexplained little wrinkles, scattered patiently across billions of light years. None of it was ever meant for us, and none of it has ever asked anything of us in return. It is simply the sound of an enormous universe going on with its business, mostly understood, occasionally surprising, and always, from this safe distance, gentle. Let it recede now, softly, into background noise, the way a distant train fades as it rounds a hill and disappears. There is nothing out there tonight that needs your attention, or your worry, or your waking mind. Let the cosmos keep transmitting its long, slow, half-understood signals into the dark, and let yourself drift a little further from it all, in toward something smaller, and stranger still, and closer to home, the quiet world of the very smallest things. Let us come in closer now, past the stars, past the galaxies, all the way down to the smallest scale there is, the strange and gentle world of the quantum, where the ordinary rules of tables and chairs and closed doors quietly stop applying. Down here, particles behave less like small solid things and more like soft possibilities, spread out and uncertain, until something happens to settle them into place. It can sound unsettling, described that way, but there is no need for it to feel that way tonight. Nothing about the quantum world has ever reached up and disturbed the comfortable, solid, dependable world you live in, the one where beds are soft and blankets are warm and mornings reliably follow nights. It is simply a deeper layer underneath all of that solidity, stranger than we ever expected, and still, in its own deepest nature, gently unexplained. Let it feel less like a puzzle to solve and more like a soft, shifting fog at the very edge of things, present, curious, and perfectly safe to drift beside. In one of the most carefully repeated experiments in all of physics, tiny particles of light or matter are sent, one at a time, toward a barrier with two narrow openings cut into it. Common sense says each particle should simply pass through one opening or the other, landing behind it in one of two simple clusters. Instead, over time, the particles build up a delicate, rippled pattern on the far side, the unmistakable signature of a wave interfering with itself, as though each single particle had somehow passed through both openings at once and met itself on the other side. It has been confirmed again and again, in careful laboratories all over the world, and it remains genuinely strange no matter how many times it is repeated. What it truly means about the nature of a single small particle, and whether it is really a wave, or really a particle, or something gentler than either word can capture, remains a beautifully open question. Before it is measured, a quantum particle is best described not as being in one definite place, but as existing in a soft spread of possibilities all at once, each one carrying its own quiet likelihood. The instant a careful measurement is made, that whole soft spread appears to settle, suddenly, into one single definite outcome. Physicists can predict, with remarkable precision, how likely each possible outcome is before the measurement happens. What none of them can yet fully explain is what a measurement actually is, at the deepest level, or why the simple act of looking should cause that gentle spread of possibility to settle into just one answer. It is called, quietly, the measurement problem, and it sits at the very heart of quantum physics, unresolved after a century of careful, patient thought. There is nothing to fear in it. It only means the universe, at its smallest scale, keeps a small and private uncertainty until the very last gentle moment. Two particles that have once interacted closely can become linked in a strange and delicate way, so that measuring a property of one instantly tells you the corresponding property of the other, even if the two particles have since drifted impossibly far apart, on opposite sides of a galaxy. Careful experiments have confirmed this entanglement again and again, and it does not allow any message or signal to travel faster than light, so nothing about it breaks the universe's careful rules. But why two particles should remain so intimately connected across such enormous distances, and what that connection truly consists of, is still not fully understood at the deepest level. Physicists have grown comfortable simply describing it mathematically, letting the deeper why remain gently unanswered. There is something rather lovely in imagining it, two small things, once close, forever quietly linked, no matter how far the universe later carries them apart from one another. Nearly a century ago, a thoughtful physicist proposed a gentle thought experiment to illustrate just how strange the quantum world's uncertainty becomes if it is allowed to scale up to something as large as a cat sealed inside a box, its fate tied to a single random quantum event. On paper, quantum rules seem to suggest the cat should be considered, before anyone opens the box, in some blended state of being neither simply alive nor simply not, a conclusion that felt, even to its own author, more like a puzzle to highlight than a serious prediction. Physicists still do not agree on exactly where, or how, the strange quantum blending of tiny particles gives way to the perfectly ordinary solidity of the everyday world you sleep in, whole and singular and entirely at ease. The cat itself was only ever a gentle illustration. But the real question behind it, where the small strangeness ends and the large calm begins, remains open and quietly fascinating. For a century, physicists have proposed several different ways of understanding what is truly happening underneath the quantum mathematics, all of which make exactly the same successful predictions, and yet describe reality itself quite differently. One view holds that a measurement simply settles things, with no need to ask what happens behind the scenes. Another imagines the universe quietly branching into many separate versions with every uncertain outcome, all of them equally real. A third pictures hidden, gentle waves guiding particles along paths we simply cannot fully see. No experiment yet devised has been able to tell these interpretations apart, since they agree so completely on every measurable outcome. It remains one of the most graceful open questions in all of physics, proof that a mystery can be worked with, calculated with, and trusted with enormous precision, long before anyone agrees on what it ultimately means. Every so often, a small particle finds itself facing a barrier that, by ordinary reasoning, it should not have nearly enough energy to cross, the quantum equivalent of a ball rolling toward a hill far too steep to climb. And yet, with a small but genuine likelihood, the particle simply appears on the other side anyway, having tunneled through the barrier rather than climbing over it, in a way that has been carefully measured and put to practical use in real technology. It happens constantly, quietly, all around you, in ways too small to ever notice directly. Precisely why the universe permits this gentle, rule-bending shortcut, at the deepest level of physical law, is still part of the same broader mystery surrounding all quantum behavior. It is oddly comforting, in its way, proof that even a seemingly solid barrier is, down at the smallest scale, a little softer and more permeable than it first appears. If two smooth metal plates are brought extremely close together in a vacuum, with nothing at all visible between them, they will nonetheless feel a very faint, real, and measurable pull drawing them toward one another, a gentle tug caused by the quiet quantum fluctuations of empty space itself, slightly restricted in the narrow gap between the plates. It has been carefully measured many times, and it stands as some of the clearest direct evidence that the empty vacuum is not truly empty, but is instead, mysteriously, alive with faint activity even when nothing else is present at all. What it fully means about the deepest nature of empty space remains part of the broader unresolved mystery we touched on earlier tonight. For now, it is enough to hold the strange, gentle image, two still plates, pulled quietly together by nothing more than the restless, whispering hush of a vacuum that was never quite as empty as it looked. There is a fundamental limit, built into the very structure of quantum physics, on how precisely certain pairs of properties, such as a particle's exact position and its exact motion, can ever be known at the very same time. The more precisely one is measured, the more genuinely uncertain the other becomes, not because our instruments are clumsy, but because nature itself, at its smallest scale, simply does not keep both values pinned down at once. It is called the uncertainty principle, and it has been confirmed with extraordinary precision again and again. What it ultimately tells us about the deepest nature of reality, whether the universe is simply reluctant to be fully known, or whether some of its properties are not even fully definite until we ask, remains gently debated. There is something soft and forgiving in that idea, worth carrying toward sleep, that some uncertainty is not a flaw to be corrected, but a basic, built-in feature of how everything, quietly, works. Two of the most successful theories in the whole history of science, quantum mechanics, describing the smallest scales, and general relativity, describing gravity and the largest scales, work together beautifully in nearly every situation we can measure, and yet no one has ever managed to fully unite them into one single, complete theory that works everywhere at once, including in the most extreme places, like the very center of a black hole. Physicists have proposed several thoughtful candidates over the decades, each with real promise and real unanswered questions of its own, but none has yet been confirmed by experiment. It remains one of the largest and most patiently pursued open questions in modern physics, keeping thousands of careful minds gently occupied. There is no need to resolve it before you sleep tonight. The universe has been quietly running on both sets of rules perfectly well, all this time, whether or not we have yet found the single sentence that ties them together. So the smallest scales of the universe, examined as closely as our best instruments allow, turn out to be every bit as mysterious as the largest ones, full of particles that behave like soft possibilities, connections that stretch across impossible distances, and questions about measurement and meaning that a century of brilliant, careful minds has not yet fully closed. And yet none of that quantum strangeness has ever once reached up to unsettle the perfectly ordinary, solid comfort of this room, this blanket, this quiet breathing. The strangeness stays down at its own small scale, doing its own small work, while up here, everything remains exactly as steady and dependable as it has always felt. You may let the quantum world keep its soft mysteries unsolved and ungrasped, and let yourself rest, instead, in the calm, solid, entirely reliable world just above it, the one built, quietly, out of trillions of small uncertainties, arranged, somehow, into something as steady and safe as sleep. We have drifted, now, down to the very smallest scale of all, and found it every bit as gently mysterious as the largest, full of soft possibilities, quiet connections, and questions still patiently unresolved after 100 years of careful study. And yet nothing about that deep strangeness has ever once reached up to disturb your comfort, or your safety, or this soft and steady moment. The quantum world does its own small, uncertain work far beneath you, and somehow, out of all that fine uncertainty, a solid and dependable world was built anyway, one with warm blankets, and quiet rooms, and nights that reliably turn into mornings. Let the smallest mystery stay small now, and let yourself rise back up, gently, into the calm, familiar, steady world just above them, and let us turn our attention, for these last chapters, to the living world around you. Let us come back now, gently, to the living world, to the animals, and bodies, and quiet biological wonders closer to home than any galaxy or quantum particle. It might seem, after everything we have wandered through tonight, that the smaller and more familiar a mystery is, the more thoroughly it must already be explained. And yet the living world keeps its own small, patient secrets too, how a bird crosses an entire hemisphere and arrives at the very same tree, how a memory is held, physically, somewhere inside a soft and living brain, how believing you will feel better can sometimes, gently, help you actually do so. None of these puzzles are dramatic, or frightening, or urgent. They are simply soft evidence that even the most ordinary, everyday corners of biology still have a little more to teach us. Let them settle over you now like the last few unclaimed pieces of a very old, very peaceful puzzle, in no hurry at all to be finished tonight. Every year, without any map, and often without ever having made the journey before, countless young birds set out across entire oceans and continents and arrive, reliably, at precisely the same wintering grounds their parents once used. Sea turtles, hatched on a single beach, swim out across an entire ocean and return, years later, to lay their own eggs on that very same shore. Scientists have found real evidence that some of these travelers can sense the Earth's magnetic field, using it rather like an internal compass, and may also read cues from the position of the stars or the angle of the sun. But precisely how a small, soft body detects something as faint as a magnetic field, and turns it into so precise and reliable a sense of direction, is still only partly understood, and remains an active and gently fascinating area of careful research. Whatever quiet sense guides them, it has worked, faithfully, for longer than anyone has been alive to marvel at it. Every memory you have ever kept, a childhood summer, a familiar voice, the shape of this very evening, is stored somewhere, physically, among the countless cells of your brain, in a pattern scientists call an engram. Researchers have made real, careful progress finding some of these patterns directly, even learning, in careful animal studies, to gently trigger a specific stored memory by activating a very particular small cluster of cells. And yet a full, detailed understanding of exactly how a memory is written, held, and later so vividly recalled, down to its finest physical detail, is still being patiently pieced together. It is a strange and lovely thought to hold as you drift toward sleep, that somewhere in the soft dark of your own mind, this very evening is already being gently written down, in a language scientists are only beginning to learn to read, ready to be recalled again, faintly, on some quiet night still to come. In careful medical studies, patients given a treatment with no active ingredient at all, a plain sugar pill, or a harmless saline injection, often report genuine, measurable improvement, simply because they believe they are being helped. It is called the placebo effect, and it is real and repeatedly confirmed, and not merely a trick of the imagination. Measurable changes in the body, including the release of the body's own natural pain-easing chemicals, have been recorded following a treatment that did, in truth, contain nothing at all. Exactly how belief alone can trigger such real physical change remains only partly mapped, a gentle meeting point between mind and body that science is still patiently exploring. It is one of the softest and most hopeful mysteries there is, proof that the quiet expectation of comfort can sometimes summon a small measure of real comfort along with it, all on its own, from somewhere deep inside a mind that trusts it will be looked after. Some creatures can do something the human body cannot. An axolotl can lose an entire limb and simply regrow it, complete with bone, muscle, and nerve, good as new, and certain starfish can rebuild an entire lost arm, occasionally even growing a whole new starfish from a single surviving piece. Scientists have identified many of the genes and cellular processes involved, and have even coaxed some regeneration in creatures that do not normally manage it. But why evolution granted such generous, thorough healing to some animals and withheld it so completely from others, including us, remains a gently open and actively studied question. There is something quietly hopeful in the research itself, if not yet in any finished answer. Careful scientists, patiently studying these small, regenerating creatures, in the hope of understanding a little better how the living body might, one day, be encouraged to mend itself more fully than it currently does. Right now, simply reading the word yawn, some part of you may feel a small, involuntary urge to do exactly that, a strange and remarkably reliable little quirk of human biology called contagious yawning, which spreads not only between people but sometimes even between a person and a dog watching them closely. Researchers have proposed several gentle explanations, including one idea that it may have evolved as a quiet, wordless way for a group to synchronize alertness or rest together, but no single explanation has been fully agreed upon. It is one of the smallest and most charming mysteries in the whole of human biology, hiding in plain sight inside an act so ordinary that almost no one thinks to wonder about it. If you happen to yawn right now, gently, let it be a small unexplained wonder rather than an ordinary reflex, one more soft piece of proof that even the tiniest habits of the body still keep a few of their reasons quietly to themselves. An octopus carries roughly 2/3 of its neurons not in its central brain but spread out through its own 8 soft arms, so that each arm is able to taste, and sense, and even react on its own, with a surprising degree of independence from the brain itself. Careful researchers have found that an octopus's arms can continue to explore and respond for a little while even when disconnected from the rest of the nervous system, raising a gentle and genuinely open question about just how unified or distributed the octopus's experience of itself truly is. We simply do not yet know what it is like, from the inside, to think with your whole body rather than one central mind. It is a lovely, strange thing to imagine as you drift toward sleep tonight, a soft, curious creature at the bottom of the sea, quietly experiencing the world through 8 independently thoughtful arms, in a way no human mind has ever been built to fully share. On a quiet evening, thousands of starlings can suddenly rise together into the sky and pour into vast, flowing, shifting shapes, twisting and turning as one single body, with no leader calling the moves and no single bird directing the rest. Careful study has shown that each bird is mostly reacting only to its few nearest neighbors, following a few simple, local rules of following and matching, and yet from that simple local behavior, an enormous and breathtakingly coordinated shape emerges across the whole flock at once. Exactly how such simple, local rules give rise to such swift, whole, seemingly intentional patterns is still being carefully modeled and refined, a lovely puzzle sitting at the meeting point of biology and mathematics. It is a gentle reminder that beautiful, complex wholes do not always need a single guiding mind behind them. Sometimes they arise, softly, out of many small, simple, quietly cooperating parts, exactly the way a good night's rest arises out of countless small, cooperating parts of you. Deep inside the green leaves of ordinary plants, tiny structures capture sunlight and pass its energy along, with almost no loss at all, to the precise place where it can be put to use. Some careful research has suggested that a subtle touch of quantum behavior, the same strange world we visited a little earlier tonight, may help this energy find its most efficient path, almost as though it were quietly testing several routes at once before settling on the best one. Other researchers remain cautious about how large a role, if any, this quantum assistance truly plays, and the question is still being carefully and respectfully debated among careful scientists. Whatever the full answer turns out to be, there is something rather wonderful in the possibility that the same soft strangeness humming at the bottom of all matter might also be quietly, efficiently at work in the simple, green, sunlit ordinariness of a single garden leaf. Some creatures seem to have found a way to almost entirely sidestep the ordinary process of aging. Certain small rodents can live many times longer than similarly sized relatives while showing very little of the usual decline, and a particular slow-moving shark in the cold northern seas may live for several centuries, quietly aging almost not at all across a span of time longer than most human civilizations. Scientists have found some genuine clues in each case, including especially careful cellular repair and unusually stable proteins, but a full and complete explanation for why these particular creatures resist aging so remarkably, while so many others do not, remains gently unfinished. It is a soft and hopeful area of active research, carried out patiently, one careful discovery at a time. Somewhere in the cold, quiet water tonight, an ancient shark may be drifting along exactly as it has for centuries, entirely unconcerned with how long science will take to explain it. So even the living world, as familiar and as close to home as it is, keeps a great many of its own gentle secrets, how a small bird finds its way across an ocean, how a memory is quietly written into living tissue, how belief itself can nudge the body toward comfort. None of these mysteries live very far away from you tonight. They live in gardens and oceans, and the small bodies of ordinary creatures, and in your own quiet mind as it slowly stores this very evening away. There is something deeply companionable in that thought, that the unexplained is not confined to distant galaxies, but sits close by, patiently, in the everyday and the familiar, keeping soft company with everything we already understand. You do not need to solve any of it before you sleep. You may simply rest, tonight, among good and patient company, wandered about and gently unfinished, exactly like you. We have wandered, now, through the small, close, living mysteries all around us, in feathers, and arms, and leaves, and the quiet workings of memory and belief. And perhaps what we have found, gathered together, is simply this, that mystery is not rare or distant, but everywhere, folded gently into the most ordinary corners of the world, keeping soft company with everything else we already know and trust. You have spent this whole night surrounded by such good, quiet company, and you will spend the rest of it the very same way. Let the living world keep its small remaining secrets a little longer. Let your own body, itself still gently mysterious in so many ways, carry on with its old and trusted work of settling toward sleep. And let us come, now, to the last and softest chapter of all, the simple comfort of not knowing. And now we come, gently, to the last of our 100 small mysteries, not one more open question about the universe or the mind, but a soft closing thought about the open questions themselves, and about the quiet comfort of simply letting them stay open. By now, perhaps, your eyes have already closed, perhaps you have drifted off somewhere among the stars, or the neurons, or the small unexplained flashes of distant light, and these words are only a soft murmur at the edge of sleep. That is exactly as it should be. There is nothing left to solve tonight, and there never really was. Science itself has never once demanded that every question be closed before the people who ask it are allowed to rest. The finest minds in every field we have visited tonight go home each evening, still surrounded by their own unfinished questions, and sleep exactly as soundly as anyone else. You may do the same. As we speak, softly, of not knowing, and of how safe it is to rest inside it, let everything else grow gentle and far away, and let yourself sink, at last, all the way down. It can be tempting to imagine science as a great book slowly being filled in, page by page, until one day every blank space is written and every question closed for good. But that has never really been how it works, and it is not how it is likely to work in the future either. Each answer science finds tends to open a handful of new and gentler questions behind it, the way opening one door in a large old house often reveals a hallway leading to several more. This is not a flaw in the process. It is closer to its whole quiet purpose. A finished book of answers would mean nothing left to wonder about, ever again, and there is very little comfort in that. A living, growing, endlessly curious field of open questions, on the other hand, is something you can rest inside indefinitely, the way you might rest in a garden that keeps gently growing long after you have stopped tending it for the night. Every time science has fully answered one of its great old mysteries, the answer has tended to open a new and deeper layer of wonder just beneath it. Understanding that matter is made of atoms revealed even smaller particles inside them. Understanding gravity as a force gave way to an even stranger picture of curved space and time. It is less like reaching the bottom of a well and more like discovering that the well simply continues, gently, deeper than expected, each new layer as calm and inviting as the last. There is no reason to find this discouraging. It means wonder is not a finite resource that science is slowly using up, but something closer to endless, renewing itself quietly with every discovery. You will never run out of soft mysteries to rest your mind upon, tonight or any night, and neither, happily, will anyone else. Many of the most accomplished scientists who have ever lived spent their entire careers gently circling questions they knew, from the very start, they would probably never see fully answered in their own lifetime. And by every account, most of them did not find this discouraging at all. Many described the not knowing itself as one of the great quiet pleasures of the work, the patient, curious company of a good open question, returned to again and again, refined a little more each time. There is a lesson in that worth carrying gently into your own rest tonight, that living comfortably beside an unanswered question is not a consolation prize for failing to solve it, but can be, in its own right, one of the most genuinely peaceful ways to spend a life, or a single evening. You do not have to finish every thought before you are allowed to feel at ease with it. It is easy, in ordinary daily life, to feel that any gap in your understanding is a small emergency, something to be filled in quickly before you can properly relax. Science, taken as a whole, suggests a gentler way of holding uncertainty instead, treating an unanswered question not as an alarm demanding attention, but as an open invitation, extended patiently, with no deadline attached at all. The universe has never once seemed to mind how long we take to understand any particular part of it. The stars kept shining through every century before anyone measured their true distance. The mind kept working through every era before anyone mapped its wiring. You may borrow that same unhurried patience tonight toward any small uncertainty of your own you happen to be carrying. It does not need to be solved before you sleep. It is allowed, simply, to be an open door, waiting quietly for whenever you are ready to walk back through it. A small child, pointing at the sky and asking simply why, and a physicist, decades into a distinguished career, still gently wrestling with the deepest unanswered questions of the cosmos, are, in a real sense, doing exactly the same thing, following the same soft, old, healthy human instinct to wonder at what is not yet understood. Nothing about growing up, or growing wise, or growing tired at the end of a long day, ever needs to switch that instinct off completely. It only asks, gently, to be given room now and then, rather than rushed past. Tonight, drifting between these 100 small mysteries, you have been doing a little of that same old, universal thing yourself, simply wondering, without needing to arrive anywhere in particular, the way every curious mind, young or old, small or vast, has always been allowed to do. It is entirely possible that a few of the mysteries we have wandered through tonight will never be fully answered, not because science has failed in any way, but because some questions may simply sit right at the very edge of what any mind, however patient and clever, is able to reach. And that, too, is allowed to be all right. A permanently open question is not a wound in our understanding. It can be, instead, a permanent and rather lovely feature of it, a little wild garden left deliberately untamed at the edge of an otherwise well-tended field, kept exactly as it is because something about its wildness is worth preserving. You do not need every mystery in your own life fully resolved either, in order to feel at peace tonight. A few permanently open questions, held gently, can simply become part of the softness of who you are. We began this whole long night with the deepest question of all, why there is a universe at all, rather than nothing, and we have wandered, since then, through 90-some smaller mysteries nested gently inside that first enormous one. None of them has been fully answered. And yet, all this time, the universe has gone on quietly holding you anyway, the bed beneath you, the air moving softly in and out of your chest, the dark folding gently around the room. It never once asked you to understand it first. It simply continued, faithfully, doing the steady work of existing, and holding, and carrying you gently through one more ordinary night. You may let that be enough now. The reason for all of it may stay forever just out of reach, and the holding will go on regardless, exactly as it has, patiently, since before there was anyone here to wonder why. There is a strange symmetry worth noticing. Here near the very end, the universe you have been drifting through tonight is unimaginably vast, and so, it turns out, is the space of things we do not yet understand about it. And yet you have never once needed to hold either vastness in your own two hands in order to feel safe within it. You are small against all of that size, in exactly the comforting way a single leaf is small against an entire forest, held by it, part of it, in no danger from its scale at all. The unanswered questions stretch out around you as wide and as gentle as the night sky itself, and you may rest beneath both of them the very same way, not by shrinking from their size, but by letting their size become, instead, a kind of soft, enormous shelter wrapped loosely and completely around this one small, quiet, sleepy corner of it all. Think of every mystery we have visited tonight, gathered together now at the very end, not as 100 small failures of understanding, but as 100 soft doors, left open on purpose, each one letting a little curious draft drift quietly through the room. You do not have to close a single one of them before you sleep. You do not have to walk through any of them either, tonight or ever, if you would rather simply enjoy the gentle draft and let it be. That is the whole comfort of not knowing. When it is held gently rather than anxiously, it turns a locked house into an open one, full of soft, curious air, moving easily from room to room, disturbing nothing, unsettling no one, asking only to be noticed now and then, and otherwise entirely content to be left exactly as open as it already is. So let every one of tonight's 100 mysteries stay open now, softly, without another thought. The universe will go on existing for reasons it has never fully explained to anyone. The stars will keep their unseen dark matter, and the galaxies will keep drifting apart a little faster every age. Your own mind will keep being gently, wonderfully aware, for reasons no scientist has ever fully closed. And none of it needs you to understand it in order to hold you safely, exactly as it always has. There is nothing left to figure out tonight, and nowhere left to reach. Let your breathing slow the rest of the way, and let your body grow heavier, warmer, softer, sinking the last small distance into rest. Let every open question become, simply, part of the quiet dark around you, patient and gentle, and entirely unafraid of staying unanswered until you wake. You do not need the answers. You never did. You only needed to rest. Sleep now. Good night. Every question we visited tonight is still out there, softly unanswered, and none of it needs anything more from you now. There is nothing left to hear, and nothing left to do, only the last few gentlest words, spoken not to keep you here, but only to walk you the rest of the way to the doorway of sleep, and leave you there, safe, and warm, and held. The universe will keep on existing, for reasons it has never fully explained to anyone, exactly as it always has. The unseen matter will keep the galaxies turning true. The unseen energy will keep gently widening the space between them. Your own aware mind, whatever it truly is, will keep doing its quiet, unexplained work, right up until the last thought softens and lets go. None of it is asking you to understand it first. It only asks you, now, to rest. So rest now, as deeply as you like. Let the last of these words dissolve quietly into whatever silence follows them, and let that silence carry you the rest of the way down. Whenever you wish to wonder again about the deepest of the deep questions, or the smallest of the small ones, they will all still be here, patient and open, and entirely unbothered by how long you were away. There is nothing left to do now. Nothing to think about. Nothing to solve, and nothing to remember, and nowhere at all to be. Let your body stay exactly as heavy as it is, sinking a little deeper with every breath out. With every breath, a little heavier. With every breath, a little further down. There is no bottom to reach, and no effort to make, only the soft, slow settling, like a leaf drifting down through still water, in no hurry at all to land. Let go of the evening now, completely, the questions we wondered about together, and the ones we quietly left for another night. None of it is asking anything more of you. You may set all of it down gently, and leave it exactly where it lies, unfinished and unafraid, and simply rest. And if some small thread of curiosity is still turning, faintly, somewhere at the edge of your mind, you do not need to chase it, or close it, or push it away. Just let it loosen on its own, the way everything loosens here, the way a question softens into wonder, and wonder softens into rest, and rest, in its own good time, softens into sleep. Everything, in the end, is allowed to let go. And so, now, softly, may you let your breathing carry you the rest of the way. In and out. In and slowly out. Each breath a little slower. Each one a little deeper. Down and gently down. The mysteries are keeping watch, patiently, exactly where you left them. The universe is holding you regardless. There is nothing you need to guard, and nothing you need to keep, and nothing left, tonight, that needs an answer. You are safe. You are warm. You are held. And you may let yourself go, all the way now, into sleep. Sleep now. You are held. Good night, and sleep well.